Hello, everyone. Tonight, we are diving deep into the warm, dusty, and surprisingly complicated world of ancient Egypt. We're going to push past the golden pharaohs and the mysterious pyramids to explore something far more relatable. What it was actually like to live, to love, and to be a person thousands of years ago. Imagine yourself right now standing on the banks of the Nile. The sun is a relentless, brilliant white disk in a sky of impossible blue. The air is thick with the smell of wet earth, blooming lotuses, and the faint, dusty scent of a civilization without pavement. Honestly, given the lack of modern medicine, sanitation, and basic workplace safety, you'd be lucky to make it to your 30s. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you really like what I'm doing here. It's always a quiet thrill to see where you're all listening from, so feel free to post your city or country and the local time in the comments below. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get going tonight. You're barefoot, and the mud between your toes is cool and squishy. It's a welcome relief from the baked earth just a few feet away, which seems to shimmer and dance with heat. This mud is everything. It's the source of life, the famous black silt that gives this entire land its real name. Not Egypt, but Kemet, the Black Land, a ribbon of impossible fertility stitched through the endless, terrifying red land, the Deshret, that stretches to every horizon. The sun is an oppressive weight, a physical presence on your shoulders and the top of your head. You wear a simple tunic of undyed linen, rougher than you'd expect, and you can feel the sweat trickling slowly down your back. Look around you. Along the water's edge, the reeds are impossibly tall, a dense, rustling forest of green stalks. Herons and ibis step delicately through the shallows, their long beaks darting into the water for a meal. You hear the rhythmic splash and creak of a distant shaduf, a simple, elegant crane made of wood and counterweighted with a ball of river mud, lifting water from the Nile into an irrigation ditch. It's a sound that has echoed here for 1,000 years, the heartbeat of this place. The air is never truly silent. There's the lowing of cattle, the indignant braying of a donkey who has decided he's carried enough grain for one day, and the constant high-pitched chatter of birds. Somewhere behind you, in the cluster of small whitewashed houses, a baby cries. You start to walk along a narrow path that hugs the edge of a barley field. The stalks are turning gold, heavy with grain, and they rustle against your legs as you pass. The smell here is different, drier, cleaner, like warm hay and sunshine. Life in Egypt isn't a single experience. It's a constant, shifting journey between the wet and the dry, the green and the red, the life of the river and the death of the desert. The entire calendar, the very concept of time, is dictated by the river. Your year is divided into 3 seasons. First comes Akhet, the season of the inundation, when the Nile swells and overflows its banks, swallowing the fields and turning your world into a vast, shallow lake. This is a time of waiting, of mending tools and catching up on projects, because you can't farm the water. Then comes Pare, the season of growth, when the waters recede, leaving behind that miraculous, fertile silt. This is the time for plowing and planting, a frenzy of activity under that ever-present sun. And finally, Shamu, the season of the harvest, the dry season when you bring in the bounty of the fields and hope you have stored enough to last until the next flood. It's an authoritative cycle and an eternal promise that gods make to the people, and your survival depends entirely on it. A flicker of movement in the reeds catches your eye. A small, sleek cat, guided by its human companion, launches itself into the air, swatting at a rising flock of ducks. It's an odd sight, a domestic animal repurposed as a feathered retriever. While the Greeks and Romans would later use dogs, the Egyptians, in their infinite wisdom, decided that their supremely aloof felines were the perfect tool for a bit of hunting in the marshes. You smirk a little at the thought. The cat lands with a soft splash, a duck held gently in its mouth, proving you wrong. As you continue your walk, you think about the river. It gives you the silt for your crops, the fish for your supper, the reeds for your baskets and your boats. It's your highway, connecting villages and cities, but it's also full of dangers. Crocodiles, silent and ancient, lurk just beneath the surface, looking at you like you're a conveniently sized snack. You know better than to wade too deep, especially at dawn or dusk. Historians still debate whether the great desert surrounding you was always so vast and unforgiving. Some evidence suggests that thousands of years ago, in the infancy of the civilization, the landscape was more of a grassy savanna dotted with trees and lakes. But as the climate changed, the sands crept in, slowly strangling the green out of the world, until only this miraculous ribbon of life remained, entirely at the mercy of the river's whims. The red land is always trying to reclaim the black land, a struggle you can see in the dust that coats every surface. It doesn't matter how often you sweep your home, the desert always finds a way back in, a fine red powder that gets in your food, your clothes, and your teeth. It's the ancient equivalent of glitter. You'll be finding it for weeks. The sun begins to dip lower, painting the western sky in hues of orange and deep purple. The heat finally starts to break. The sounds of the village grow louder now. You hear laughter, the rhythmic thud of someone grinding grain, the sizzle and scent of fish being cooked over a small fire. You're approaching home. The concerns of the gods, the pharaoh, and the great cycles of the cosmos shrink away, replaced by the immediate, simple realities of your life. The ache in your back from a day of work, the feeling of hunger in your stomach, and the thought of the people waiting for you inside one of those small mud brick houses, where the walls are thick enough to hold the memory of the day's heat long into the cool of the night. This is your world, not one of the gold masks and grand tombs, but one of mud, water, family, and the enduring rhythms of the Nile. As you step into the dusty space that serves as the main thoroughfare of your village, the sounds become clearer, the smells more distinct. The communal oven radiates a comforting warmth, and the aroma of baking bread mingles with that of grilling fish. Children, covered in a fine layer of grime from their play, chase each other with joyful shrieks, weaving between the adults who are settling down after a long day. A woman sits in the doorway of her home, her silhouette framed by the deepening twilight. As you draw closer, you see her face is a mask of serene beauty, crafted according to a style that has remained unchanged for generations. Her real hair is likely shaved or cropped very short, hidden beneath an intricate wig of braided human hair, dark and heavy. It falls to her shoulders in a style that would look perfectly at home in a 1960s fashion magazine, which just goes to show there's truly nothing new under the sun. Her eyes are the most striking feature. They are heavily lined with thick black kohl, extending from the corner of her eye out towards her temple in a dramatic almond shape. This isn't just for show, though it certainly looks elegant. You wear it too. The dark paint helps to cut the brutal glare of the sun reflecting off the water and the pale sand, acting like built-in sunglasses. It's made from a mineral called galena, which is just a fancy way of saying lead sulfide. An authoritative fact of your daily life is that you are smearing lead-based makeup around your eyes every single morning, which probably explains a few things. Sometimes, especially for festivals, women and men will also add a shadow of powdered green malachite to their upper lids, a vibrant dash of color against their sun-browned skin. Historians centuries from now will debate the primary purpose of this dramatic makeup. Was it purely for beauty? Was it a practical sunscreen? Or, as many of your contemporaries believe, did it have a magical function invoking the protection of the falcon god Horus and warding off eye infections? The answer is probably a bit of all three. It's multi-purpose skincare, and you wouldn't be caught dead without it. You walk past a neighbor, a muscular man whose only garment is a short linen kilt pleated at the front. His chest and head are bare, gleaming with the light sheen of sweat and perhaps a bit of scented oil. You notice his face is completely smooth. While beards are occasionally seen on foreigners or laborers, a clean-shaven face is the mark of a civilized Egyptian man. The only person allowed a beard is the pharaoh, and even that is a false one, a finely braided and perfumed wooden chin accessory strapped on to signify divine authority. For everyone else, it's just seen as unkempt. You touch your own head self-consciously. Like many, you keep your hair very short or are completely bald beneath a more practical wig of vegetable fiber or your own hair saved from a previous cut. In a land this hot, with pests like lice being a constant, irritating threat, a shaved head is the most hygienic and comfortable option. Wigs are your way of showing off. A simple shoulder-length bob for daily work, and a more elaborate, heavy, and often scented wig for a party or religious festival. Cleanliness is paramount. It's not just about looking good. It's a sign of purity and order in a world where the desert's chaos is always threatening to creep in. An odd fact of life here is the obsession with removing body hair. Men and women alike strive for a smooth, hairless body, using everything from bronze razors and tweezers to a sticky concoction of honey and sugar that you could call the world's first and most painful waxing kit. Your own clothes are simple. You wear a loose-fitting tunic made of linen, the miracle fabric of your people, derived from the flax plant that grows so abundantly in the fields after the inundation. It can be woven into everything from the coarse, rough canvas of a boat's sail to a textile so fine it's almost transparent. The quality of your linen is an instant indicator of your social status. The wealthy drape themselves in swathes of the finest, most delicate, and whitest linen, often intricately pleated. It's light, it's airy, and when it's hot, it's all you want to wear. But you know that the fine, almost the see-through dresses worn by noble women in tomb paintings aren't quite the reality for everyday life. A strong gust of wind would lead to a very embarrassing social situation. For you, the linen is thicker, more durable, and left in its natural off-white color. As you near your own home, you hear the faint clinking sound of jewelry. Faience beads, a type of glassy ceramic glazed in brilliant blues and greens, are popular for bracelets and necklaces. They mimic the precious turquoise and lapis lazuli that only the very rich can afford. Amulets are tucked into necklaces or worn on strings around the wrist. The ankh for life, the scarab beetle for rebirth, the eye of Horus for protection. These aren't just trinkets, they are portable prayers, small pieces of magic that you carry with you. Your hand goes to the small clay ankh you wear around your neck, its surface worn smooth from years of touch. The sun has almost completely set and torches are being lit, casting a flickering, warm glow on the whitewashed walls of the houses. Your long shadow dances ahead of you as you finally reach your own doorway, ready to shed the dust, the sweat, and the expectations of the day and step into the private world of your home. You duck your head slightly as you pass through the low doorway, leaving the communal village life behind you. The inside of your home is darker, cooler. The thick mud brick walls have absorbed the sun's fury all day, and now they begin to slowly radiate that warmth back into the single main room. It's not a large space. The floor is packed earth, swept clean but perpetually dusty. The ceiling is low, made of palm logs laid close together and covered with a plaster of mud and straw. There's only one small high window, more of a ventilation slit than a source of light, designed to let the hot air escape without letting in the worst of the direct sun. A small hearth in the corner is unlit now, but the faint smell of charcoal and wood smoke lingers in the air. In the center of the room, a woman, your wife, looks up from her work. She has been grinding grain for tomorrow's bread, a task that seems endless. She kneels on a woven reed mat, using a heavy, smooth stone to crush barley against a larger, slightly concave stone set into the floor. The muscles in her arms and back are well defined from this repetitive daily labor. This is the cornerstone of her domain. The ancient Egyptian legal system, an authoritative fact of your time, grants women a remarkable degree of autonomy compared to their counterparts in other ancient societies. Legally, she is your equal. She can own property, run a business, inherit land and wealth, and even bring a case to court. The depictions of women in art, elegant and serene, often mask the sheer physical labor that defines the lives of most. Her name, you think, means something like the beloved one, or perhaps beautiful. Names here are important, often containing the name of a god or a positive quality, a little bit of magic to set a child on the right path. As she rises to greet you, you notice her hands are calloused, her bare feet dusty. While your life is defined by the work outside in the fields, on the river, or in a craftsman's workshop, hers is centered here in the home. It's a sphere of production. She's not just grinding grain, she is responsible for baking the bread, brewing the beer that is the staple of your diet, weaving the linen for your clothes, and raising the children who are your future and your social security. Her role is not seen as lesser than yours, simply different. You are two halves of a whole, a productive unit designed to sustain the family. The love and affection are there, but the foundation of your relationship is this practical partnership. An odd fact of your household arrangement is the presence of a small, painted statue of a hippo-headed goddess on a shelf in the corner. This is Taweret, a ferocious-looking but deeply benevolent deity of childbirth and fertility. You may not think about her much, but to your wife, she is a powerful daily presence, a guardian against the very real dangers that come with bringing new life into the world. It's a reminder that even in the most mundane domestic setting, the gods are never far away. You exchange a few quiet words. You hand her the string of fish you caught earlier, and she takes them to a small table to clean them for the evening meal. You watch her move around the familiar space, her simple linen dress tied at the waist with a colorful sash. Historians will later puzzle over the true balance of power in marriages like yours. Did the legal equality translate into true equality in the home? Tomb paintings often show husbands and wives in poses of deep affection, the wife's arm wrapped around her husband's waist or shoulder. They're depicted as a team, supervising their estates together. But these are idealized images, the social media profile pics of the ancient world. They represent the ideal, not always the daily grind. The love poems speak of longing and passion, but the legal documents, the marriage contracts, speak of property and obligations. The truth, you suspect, is somewhere in between. Your wife has a voice and a strong one, especially when it comes to the household budget, but your word often carries the final weight on larger matters. It's a dynamic of respect and clearly defined spheres of influence. She is the mistress of the house, and that title is not just symbolic, it carries real authority. You slump down onto a low stool, your back aching. The day was hard, the sun relentless. You look at your own hands, the skin rough, the nails caked with the dark river mud. Your strength is for the outside world, for wrestling a crop from the earth or navigating a boat through the unpredictable currents of the Nile. Her strength is for this space, for turning raw grain into life-sustaining bread, for raising healthy children from squalling infants, for transforming this simple structure of mud and straw into a home. A joke passes between you, something about the laziness of the neighbor's donkey, and she laughs, a sound that fills the small room. In this moment, the strict definitions of male and female roles blur. You are just two tired people at the end of a long day, partners in the endless, difficult, and sometimes beautiful business of living. The division of labor isn't about subordination, it's about survival. a strategy honed over centuries to make life possible in this land of stark and demanding beauty. The flickering light from a small earthenware lamp, its wick fed by sesame oil, casts long dancing shadows on the walls as you eat. The meal is simple: flatbread, still warm from a clay platter, a handful of grilled tilapia seasoned with salt and garlic, and a bowl of lentils. You wash it down with a thick, nutritious beer, more like a thin porridge than the bubbly stuff people will drink thousands of years from now. It's the calorie-rich fuel that powers this whole civilization. As the quiet of the evening settles in, you look at your wife across the small space. In the soft lamplight, the hard edges of the day begin to melt away. The lines of fatigue on her face soften, and you remember the girl she was when you first met. Courtship here isn't a frantic public affair. It's a delicate dance of stolen glances, careful words, and the mediation of family. But beneath the practical considerations of joining two households, there is a space for genuine romance, a world of feeling captured in one of your culture's most beautiful and enduring creations: love poetry. You remember hearing a singer at a local festival once, his voice accompanied by the gentle strumming of a harp, reciting verses that felt both intensely personal and universally true. "My love is one and only without her peer, the most beautiful of women," he sang, his voice rising with passion. The poems are often written from the perspective of a brother and sister, which sounds very strange to a modern ear, but it's a term of endearment, a way of expressing a deep familial closeness and intimacy between lovers. Not a celebration of actual incest, despite what some might cheekily suggest. You recall one poem in particular, where a young man describes being sick with longing. He lies in his room, and when his neighbors come to visit, he can't respond. Only the thought of his beloved, he says, can make him well again. "Her name is what will lift me up," the poem declares. "Her coming and going is my health and my cure." It's a sentiment you understand perfectly. There were days during your own courtship when a glimpse of her fetching water from the community well was enough to make your entire day feel lighter. You were just a boy, really, your muscles still lean and your face yet to see a razor, not that you use one now anyway. The feelings were overwhelming, a sickness of the heart that felt both agonizing and wonderful. Art, too, gives you glimpses of this affection. While grand temple reliefs show the pharaoh smiting his enemies, the smaller, more personal art you see on household items or in private tombs tells a different story. You've seen a cosmetic spoon carved into the shape of a young girl pulling a raft through a lotus pond, a scene of playful, innocent beauty. You've seen tomb paintings of a husband and wife sitting together on a bench, her hand resting gently on his arm. An authoritative fact that scholars will confirm is the prevalence of these paired statues. A man and a woman, standing or seated side by side, presenting a united front for eternity. Often, the woman's arm is wrapped around the man's waist, a gesture of both support and possession. It is a pose that says, "We are a unit. We face the afterlife together." You think about your first clumsy attempts at flirtation. There's a poem where a girl complains about her mother telling her to stop seeing her beloved. "He has no sense," her mother says. But the girl's heart is set. She decides the best course of action is to pretend to be ill. "Then my mother will be confounded," the poem goes, "and the doctors with their remedies. My beloved is my only physician." It's a timeless teenage strategy. An odd fact you know is that flowers play a huge role in this romantic language. The blue lotus flower, in particular, is a potent symbol. It opens in the morning sun and closes at night, its beautiful blue petals rising from the murky water. It represents creation, rebirth, and intoxication. Offering a lotus to your beloved or seeing her with one tucked into her wig is an intensely romantic, almost erotic gesture. The flower's scent was believed to be intoxicating, a magical perfume to heighten the senses. Historians will forever debate the sincerity of these public and private displays. Are they genuine expressions of love, or are they conforming to a social ideal of what a married couple should look like? For you, the answer is simple. You don't need a historian to tell you what you feel. Looking at your wife now, watching the lamplight catch the faint sheen of oil on her skin, you feel a surge of affection that is warm and steady, a feeling built not just on initial passion, but on shared labor, shared anxieties, and shared laughter in this small, dusty room. You reach out and take her hand. Her fingers are rough from the grindstone, but her grip is firm and familiar. No words are necessary. The connection is as real and as vital as the Nile itself, a current of quiet understanding that runs beneath the surface of your practical, everyday lives. It's a love that is less like a flash flood and more like the steady, life-giving flow of the river you both depend on. Her hand in yours feels solid, a comfortable weight. This bond between you, which feels so personal and elemental right now, is also a creation of law and social custom. It's a practical arrangement and an institution as foundational to your society as the temples and the granaries. You think back to when your two families decided you should be married. There was no grand religious ceremony, no priest blessing your union under the watchful eyes of the Gazas. An authoritative fact about ancient Egyptian life is that marriage was a purely secular affair. It was a social agreement, formalized not in a temple but by the signing of a contract. Your society, you think with a hint of pride, is one of the first to grasp the deep and abiding human need for paperwork. Your own marriage contract was a relatively simple affair. It was drawn up by a scribe, a man who possessed the rare and valuable skill of literacy. You remember him sitting cross-legged, his papyrus scroll laid out on a wooden board, his reed pen flying across the surface. The document outlined the practicalities. It listed the bride wealth your family gave to hers, not as a payment for her, but as a compensation to her family for the loss of a valuable, productive member of their household. It might have been a few goats, some sacks of grain, perhaps a piece of furniture or a fine linen tunic. In return, her family provided a dowry, goods that she brought with her into your new household. These items, often things like kitchen equipment, a nice chest for storage, some jewelry, remained her personal property throughout the marriage. You reach out and touch a sturdy wooden chest that sits against one wall, its surface decorated with simple painted lines. That was part of her dowry. If you were to separate, she would take it and everything in it with her. This is a key part of the contract, the protection of the woman's economic rights. The contract also stipulated the annual amount of maintenance you were obligated to provide for her and your future children, a set quantity of grain, oil, and clothing. This wasn't just a promise, it was a legally binding commitment. If you failed to provide, she could take you to the local council of elders and they would enforce the contract. It's a surprisingly modern-seeming arrangement, a clear-eyed acknowledgement that love is grand, but you also need to make sure the pantry is stocked. Thinking about contracts reminds you of an odd fact of your literate world. Scribes didn't just write marriage contracts, they wrote everything. One of the most famous surviving documents from your time is a simple attendance log for the workers at the royal necropolis. The scribe dutifully noted not just who was present, but also why they were absent. The excuses range from the understandable, like being sick or brewing beer, a legitimate and important task, to the slightly more baffling, like his wife was bleeding, which most historians assume refers to menstruation, or my personal favorite, he was bitten by a scorpion. It's a wonderful, humanizing glimpse into the daily hassles of being a regular Egyptian worker. As your wife gets up to put away the remains of the meal, you think about the legal framework that underpins your life together. Historians will debate the true age of consent in your time. Legal texts don't specify a minimum age for marriage. Girls were generally considered ready for marriage after they began menstruating, which might be as young as 12 or 13. For boys, it was usually a bit later, perhaps 16 to 20, when they had established their trade or profession. These weren't romantic decisions made by lovesick teens, they were pragmatic choices made by families. The goal was to establish a stable new economic unit as soon as was practical. Yet, within this rigid framework, personal choice wasn't entirely absent. The love poems suggest that the passions of young people were a recognized force, and a sensible parent would likely try to make a match that wasn't actively opposed by the children involved. A miserable, uncooperative daughter-in-law, after all, isn't a very productive one. The legal term for marriage is to establish a household. When you moved in together, when you started living as a family unit, that was the act that constituted your marriage. For wealthier people, the contracts could be far more complex, dealing with huge amounts of land, property, and inheritance rights. Your own contract is just one sheet of papyrus, but its significance is immense. It represents order, predictability, and social stability. It's a shield against the chaos of the world. It's the official recognition that you have moved from being a child in your father's house to being a man in your own. You are no longer just you. You are part of a new entity, a house. You watch your wife bank the embers of the hearth for the night, her movements economical and practiced. She is the Nebet Per, the mistress of the house. You are the Neb Per, the master of the house. Your roles, defined and complementary, were essentially cemented by that dry legal document. And yet, what the contract could never capture is the reality of this moment, the quiet intimacy, the shared weariness, the unspoken partnership that fills the space between you. The law provides the structure, the solid walls of the house, but the life lived within it, the warmth, the arguments, the laughter, that is something you have to build for yourselves, day by day, stone by stone. Your gaze falls upon a small, crudely carved wooden toy lying in the corner of the room. A hippopotamus with wheels, its mouth hinged to open and close when it's pulled along. A faint smile touches your lips. It belongs to your eldest son, who is currently sleeping soundly on a reed mat in the coolest corner of the room, his small chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The ultimate purpose of your marriage, the primary goal of your entire domestic and legal partnership, is to produce children. They are not just a joy or a blessing, they are an absolute practical necessity. Your world has no formal retirement plan, no state pension. Your children are your social security. They're the ones who will care for you when you are old and infirm. And most importantly, they are the ones who will be responsible for your proper burial and the ongoing offerings you will need to survive in the afterlife. Having a house full of children is a sign of wealth, virility, and divine favor. Barrenness, on the other hand, is a terrible misfortune, often seen as a curse or a failing, almost always placed upon the woman. You've seen couples go to great lengths to conceive, making pilgrimages to temples sacred to fertility gods, leaving offerings and reciting powerful prayers. But the process itself is shrouded in danger. An authoritative fact of life and death in your world is the staggeringly high rate of infant and maternal mortality. Childbirth is a perilous, women-only affair, attended by female relatives, midwives, and maybe a priestess of a goddess like Taweret. The birthing mother would often squat on a special set of decorated bricks, a position that used gravity to her advantage, while chanting spells and prayers to ward off malevolent spirits. The whole experience is a battle, a fight for two lives. Remember that fierce-looking hippo goddess Taweret? Her image is everywhere in matters of childbirth. Amulets bearing her likeness would be worn by the mother, her grotesque and powerful form. Part hippo, part lion, part crocodile with the swollen belly, believed to frighten away any demon that might harm the mother or child. You are glad these are not your concerns. The world of childbirth is a female mystery, a sacred and terrifying space where men are not welcome. Your only role is to wait outside, pacing nervously, and hope for a good outcome. And you do hope, desperately. A son is particularly prized, as he will carry on the family name and inherit your trade. A daughter is also valuable, for she can be married off to form strategic alliances with other families, and she will one day run her own household, creating another node in your ever-expanding family network. The bond between mother and child here is intense and long-lasting. Mothers typically nurse their children for up to 3 years. It's not just for nutrition. Everyone knows it acts as a form of birth control, spacing out pregnancies and giving the mother's body time to recover. The sight of a woman breastfeeding is common and unremarkable. It's part of the fabric of daily life. Art is filled with images of the goddess Isis nursing her infant son Horus, a potent symbol of maternal love and protection that will echo in the iconography of other religions for thousands of years. An odd fact of your family life revolves around naming. Children are often named after a god or goddess in hopes of gaining their favor. Names like Amenhotep, Amun is satisfied, or Mutnofret, Mut is beautiful, are common. Sometimes a child's name reflects the circumstances of their birth, like Nacht, meaning strong, perhaps for a baby who survived a difficult delivery. Historians still debate the full significance of these names, but they were clearly more than just labels. They were little packets of hope and magic bestowed upon a new life. And nicknames were just as common then as they are now. A boy named Amenhotep for official purposes might just be called Hui by his family. It's a reminder that beneath all the formal traditions, the daily interactions are as human and as simple as ever. You look again at your sleeping son, his small hand curled into a fist. You see in his face the features of your father and the stubborn set of his mother's jaw. He is your legacy. He is the reason you work so hard in the sun, the reason you endure the dust and the aches and the uncertainty of the harvest. Someday you will teach him your trade. You will show him how to read the river, how to mend a net, or how to shape clay on a wheel. He will learn the stories of the gods and the history of his people. He will grow up, find a wife, and start his own household, and the great cycle of life, death, and family will continue. It's a heavy responsibility, but also a source of immense pride. Right now, though, he's not a legacy or an economic asset. He's just a little boy, dreaming whatever dreams small children dream in the quiet, dusty dark of a simple Egyptian night. And you wouldn't trade that for all the gold in the pharaoh's treasury. Your home, for all its emotional significance as the center of your family, is physically quite small. As your children grow, the single main room can feel crowded. It's the living room, the kitchen, the workshop, and the bedroom, all rolled into one. Reed mats are unrolled at night for sleeping, and rolled back up during the day to clear the floor space. Your meager furniture, a couple of low stools, that wooden chest, a few clay pots and baskets, is pushed against the walls. In this communal, one-room living situation, the question of privacy becomes complicated. Finding a moment alone, especially for a married couple, requires a bit of creativity and an understanding of the rhythms of the house. For a peasant farmer like yourself, the concept of a separate bedroom is a foreign luxury. But that doesn't mean intimacy is impossible. It simply means it's opportunistic and quiet. It happens late at night when the children are deeply asleep and the village outside has fallen silent, the only sounds being the gentle chirping of crickets and the distant bark of a dog. It happens under the cover of thick darkness, broken only by a sliver of moonlight through the high window slit. The bed itself is just a mat on the floor, perhaps with a slightly raised wooden platform in a more well-to-do house. with a crescent-shaped wooden headrest that looks impossibly uncomfortable to a modern observer, but is perfectly normal to you. It keeps your head elevated off the dusty floor and allows air to circulate around your neck on a hot night, protecting your elaborate wig, if you were a noble who slept in one, which you are not. It's the ancient equivalent of putting your pillow on the cool side. If you were wealthier, an artisan or a minor official living in a town, your house might be more spacious. An authoritative layout for a middle-class Egyptian home, like those excavated at the workers' village of Deir el-Medina, often featured a multi-room design. You would enter into a main reception area, which might have a low, built-in mud brick divan for guests. Past that would be a second hall or living space, and at the very back, a dedicated sleeping area with a raised platform bed. There might even be a cellar for storage and a small kitchen area with a proper oven. And the true luxury, the ancient Egyptian equivalent of an ensuite bathroom, was a rooftop terrace. Stairs would lead up from the main room to the flat roof, an open-air living space. Here you could catch the evening breeze, sleep under the stars on a hot night, and, most importantly, find a measure of privacy away from the rest of the household below. It's easy to imagine a couple retreating to the roof after the children are asleep, sharing a cup of beer and looking out over the silent, moonlit village. Even in your simple home, the roof offers a potential escape. You might climb a rickety wooden ladder propped against an outside wall to do just that. Spreading a mat on the sun-baked mud plaster of the roof, with the vast star-dusted canopy of the desert sky above you, is a profound experience. The stars here are brilliant, unobscured by the smog and artificial light of future ages. You can see the band of the Milky Way so clearly it looks like a celestial river, a mirror to the Nile below. An odd fact you might contemplate up there is that your people are keen observers of the night sky, but their constellations are different. You see a hippopotamus, a crocodile, a lion. Your entire sense of celestial geography is different from what will come later, a unique map of the heavens. Sharing this silent, beautiful space with your partner creates a bubble of intimacy, a temporary world apart from the demands of work and family. Historians and archaeologists still debate the exact use of every room in more complex Egyptian houses. Was the second hall a dining room, a workspace, or a women's area? The interpretation of floor plans is a tricky business, as the function of a room could be flexible and change throughout the day. What is clear, however, is that as wealth increased, so did the desire for specialized spaces and the separation of public and private life. A wealthy nobleman's villa would be a sprawling compound with gardens, pools, separate quarters for servants, and dedicated bedrooms that offered a level of privacy you can only dream of. His world would be full of doors that could be closed. Yours is mostly open. For now, though, you are earthbound in your one-room house. The fire in the hearth is dead, the children are asleep, and the village is quiet. You and your wife lie on your mat. The only light comes from the brilliant Egyptian moon, filtering through the high window and painting a pale rectangle on the opposite wall. You whisper to each other, your voices low so as not to wake the children sleeping just a few feet away. This is your privacy. It isn't a place but a time, a fragile temporary sanctuary carved out of the darkness and the quiet. It's a shared secret in the heart of the sleeping house, a moment of connection that reaffirms the bond that lies at the center of your crowded, noisy, and beautifully complicated life. Lying there in the quiet dark, you feel a sense of stability, of rightness in your small world. But you know it isn't always this peaceful for every couple. The same society that so carefully documents the beginning of a marriage with a contract also has methodical procedures for when it all falls apart. Love can curdle into resentment, and partnerships can break under the strain of hardship, infidelity, or just plain incompatibility. Even in a world of divine order and tradition, things go wrong. If you and your wife were to decide you could no longer live together, The process of divorce would be, much like marriage, a surprisingly straightforward and secular affair. There's no great social stigma attached to it, especially if the separation is mutual. The most common phrase found in documents to signify a divorce is simply, "I have abandoned you," or "I am leaving your house." The main concern of the law is not to assign blame, but to ensure a fair and orderly division of property. Remember that marriage contract you signed? This is where it becomes critically important again. An authoritative legal principle in your society is that the woman is entitled to her dowry back, as well as a significant portion, often 1/3, of the communal property you acquired together during the marriage. This ensures that a divorced woman is not left destitute and can support herself or enter into a new marriage. Either the husband or the wife can initiate a divorce. A man can simply declare it, but he'd better be prepared to pay the settlement fees stipulated in the contract. A woman can also leave her husband's house and return to her father's, and her family would then petition the local council to dissolve the union and enforce the financial clause. It's a system designed to discourage casual divorce by making it a significant financial decision, especially for the husband. You can't just throw your wife out on a whim without facing some serious economic consequences. It's a pretty effective deterrent. If a man in your village did that, he'd be seen not just as cruel, but as a fool who can't manage his own house. Adultery, however, is a much more serious matter, and the double standard is stark. If a man has an affair, especially with an unmarried woman or a servant, it might be frowned upon, but it's not a catastrophic legal offense. But for a married woman, adultery is a crime of the highest order. It undermines the very foundation of the family by casting doubt on the legitimacy of her children, and, by extension, all lines of inheritance. The punishments described in some legal texts are severe, ranging from mutilation, like having your nose cut off to mark you publicly, to, in the most extreme literary and mythological cases, death by burning or being fed to a crocodile. A rather grisly joke for you might be that this makes breaking up by mutual consent seem a lot more appealing. Historians still debate how often these brutal punishments were actually carried out. They may have functioned more as a terrifying deterrent, a worst-case scenario described in texts to scare people into line, rather than a common practice. Local village councils probably dealt with these situations with more nuance, perhaps ordering a fine or a public shaming. An odd fact related to social order comes from, again, the workers' village at Deir el-Medina. The court records there show them dealing with all sorts of domestic disputes. One case involves a serial adulterer named Peneb, who, among many other transgressions, was accused of seducing multiple married women. The complaints against him give us a juicy, tabloid-level insight into the fact that not everyone lived up to the serene, orderly ideal depicted in tomb paintings. People were messy then, just as they are now. Imagine the scandal if your neighbor's wife were discovered with another man. The whole village would be buzzing. It would be the talk of the well and the workshop for weeks. The shame would fall not just on her, but on her entire family. Her husband would be seen as a man who couldn't control his own household, a deep insult to his honor. He would almost certainly divorce her immediately, and would likely try to keep both her dowry and her share of the property, though he would have to argue his case before the elders. As you lie there, you feel a renewed appreciation for the simple, undramatic peace of your own home. The trust you share with your wife is a quiet treasure more valuable than the grain in your silo or the tools in your shed. It's the invisible foundation upon which your house is built. Outside, the world is full of potential chaos, failed harvests, sudden illness, greedy officials, and the messy entanglements of human hearts. But in here, in this small, shared space, you have managed to build a small pocket of order, a partnership strong enough to weather the small and large storms of life. You hope, with a simple and earnest piety, that the gods will continue to grant you this peace. This peace you feel, this hope for a fertile family and a stable home, isn't just a private wish. It's a concern that ripples all the way up to the cosmic level. You believe the universe is a dynamic place, full of powerful forces you can appeal to for help. When it comes to fertility, virility, and the raw, procreative energy of life, your people have a vibrant and fascinating cast of divine characters to call upon. These aren't distant, abstract gods. Their presence is felt in the home, at festivals, and in the very landscape around you. The most potent and visually arresting of these is the god Min. You've seen his image on temple walls and perhaps on small amulets. He is impossible to misinterpret. Min is always depicted as a man, standing, wrapped in mummy-like bandages that signify his ancient chthonic power, but with one arm raised holding a flail, a symbol of authority. And, most conspicuously, he is shown with a massive, erect phallus. There's no coyness here. Min is the god of male fertility, sexual potency, and the generative power of nature. His primary festival is celebrated at the beginning of the harvest season, a riotous and joyful affair. The pharaoh himself would lead a procession to the fields, where he would ceremonially cut the first sheaf of wheat and let loose a white bull, another potent symbol of virility. It's a powerful ritual, thanking Min for the fertility of the land and asking for his continued blessing on the people. Having an image of Min, you might joke, is one way to ensure no one misunderstands the purpose of your bedroom. Balancing Min's raw masculine energy is the great goddess Hathor. She is one of the most beloved and complex deities in the entire pantheon. She is the goddess of love, beauty, music, dance, and joy. She is a sky goddess, sometimes depicted as a celestial cow whose milk nourishes all of creation, and a goddess of foreign lands, the patron of miners who travel into the desert. But one of her primary roles is overseeing romance and procreation. She is often called the Golden One, and prayers to her ask for help in finding a lover or for a successful pregnancy. The Greeks would later equate her with their own Aphrodite, a comparison that makes perfect sense. Hathor represents the joyful, intoxicating side of love. Her main cult center at Dendera was famous for its wild festivals, filled with music, dancing, and, famously, a great deal of drinking. Intoxication was seen as a way to achieve a different state of consciousness, a way to get closer to the divine joy that Hathor embodied. An authoritative fact about your religious life is the deep connection between these gods and the monarchy. The pharaoh wasn't just a king. He was the primary intermediary between the gods and humanity. His own virility and the fertility of his queens were seen as essential for the prosperity of the entire nation. If the royal family was successfully producing heirs, it was a sign that the gods were pleased and that Ma'at, the divine principle of order, truth, and balance, was being upheld. If the land was fertile and the people were fertile, all was right with the cosmos. The pharaoh's potency was a direct reflection of the land's potency. But not all gods of the house are so grand and imposing. One of the most common and beloved figures is not one of the great state gods at all. It's Bes. He is an odd little god, a dwarf with a lion's mane, a sticking-out tongue, and a perpetually bow-legged stance. He's often shown brandishing a knife or playing a tambourine. His appearance is meant to be fearsome, not to you, but to evil spirits. Bes is the fierce and loyal guardian of the household, with a special focus on protecting pregnant women, mothers, and newborn children. You will find his image carved onto beds, headrests, and cosmetic jars. He is a happy, noisy, and slightly monstrous bouncer for your family, scaring away snakes, scorpions, and demons of sickness with his grotesque face and loud music. It's an odd fact that a deity so crucial to domestic safety looks like the result of a nightmare, but his ugliness is his weapon. He fights chaos with chaos, and every household is grateful for his protection. Historians debate whether the common person had a deep understanding of the complex theology being developed by the priests in the great temples of Karnak and Luxor. Did you, a simple farmer, care about the subtle distinctions between the soul's different parts, the Ka and the Ba? Probably not in great detail. Your religion is a more practical, immediate affair. You know which god to ask for a good harvest, Min, which goddess to thank for a beautiful child, Hathor, and which grotesque little dwarf to trust to keep your family safe at night, Bess. You leave offerings of food and beer at small household shrines, you wear their amulets, and you join in their festivals. The gods are your partners in the great, ongoing project of living. Their job is to keep the cosmic forces in balance. Your job is to keep your family fed and your fields watered, and together, you hope, you can make this small patch of the world flourish. The thought of the gods, powerful, remote, yet intimately involved in your life, is comforting. You pray to Min for your strength, and to Hathor for your wife's joy. You trust in the ferocious, benevolent watchfulness of Bess to guard your sleeping children. But you also know that the gods, for the most part, handle the big picture, the rising of the sun, the flooding of the Nile. For the smaller, more immediate concerns of the body, you have another set of tools, a strange and wonderful collection of knowledge that is part science, part magic, and part desperate guesswork. This is the world of your sinew, your doctor or physician, and the remedies passed down through generations. If you and your wife decided that your household was full enough for now that another mouth to feed might stretch your resources too thin, you wouldn't just be relying on hope or abstinence. You have methods for contraception, described in medical texts written on scrolls of precious papyrus. And they are creative. The most famous and frankly most alarming method involves a pessary made of crocodile dung mixed with soured milk or honey. The mixture would be formed into a thick paste and, well, applied internally. It's hard to imagine this being a popular choice. Not exactly a mood setter, but perhaps the sheer shock of the suggestion was contraceptive enough. The logic, if you can call it that, might have been magical. The crocodile is a powerful and dangerous animal associated with the god Sobek, and its waste might therefore possess properties that could ward off conception. A more common and slightly less bizarre option involves a mixture of acacia tree gum and honey, smeared onto a wad of linen or lint and used in a similar fashion. An authoritative fact that will only be understood thousands of years in the future is that this method actually had a decent chance of working. When acacia gum ferments, it produces lactic acid, a chemical that is a known spermicide and is still used in contraceptive jellies in the modern era. Your ancestors, through centuries of trial and error, stumbled upon a genuinely effective medical solution without having the slightest idea of the chemical principles at work. They just knew that it worked more often than not. And what about the reverse? How do you know if you've been successful in conceiving? You can't just go down to the local market for a testing kit. But you do have a famous and fascinating method of your own. The test requires a woman to urinate into two different small bags, one filled with barley seeds and the other with emmer wheat seeds, over the course of several days. If the seeds in either bag begin to sprout, she is pregnant. If they don't, she isn't. But the test goes a step further, claiming to predict the gender of the child. If the barley sprouts first, it will be a boy. If the emmer sprouts first, it will be a girl. Getting your gender reveal party ideas from the vegetable patch is a new level of organic living. Modern science has actually tested this, and surprisingly, the estrogen in a pregnant woman's urine can indeed stimulate seed germination with about 70% accuracy. The gender prediction part, however, is pure folklore. Historians and medical experts still debate the foundation of Egyptian medicine. How much of it was based on keen empirical observation, like the acacia gum contraceptive, and how much was pure magical thinking? Your medical papyri are full of both. A treatment for a migraine might involve a complex spell and an amulet, while a recipe for healing a wound involves willow bark, a natural source of salicylic acid, the active ingredient in aspirin. An odd and slightly horrifying fact is the prescribed cure for blindness in one papyrus. Take the mashed eyes of a pig, mix with red ochre and honey, and pour it into the patient's ear. You have to assume the customer reviews for these treatments were probably mixed. The core of your medical theory revolves around a system of channels called Me Too that run through the body, connecting your heart to all your other organs and limbs. These channels carry the air you breathe, the blood in your veins, the tears from your eyes, and the semen from your body. Sickness is believed to be caused by a blockage or a disruption in these channels, created by evil spirits or harmful substances. Therefore, most remedies are designed to flush, purge, or unblock the Me Too system. This is why many of your medicines are laxatives or emetics, and why a treatment for the eyes might be poured into the ear. It's all connected. A plumbing system for the soul. Lying in the dark, you contemplate this strange mixture of wisdom and nonsense. It's your reality. You live in a world where a prayer to a hippo goddess, a paste made of crocodile dung, and a urine-based botany experiment are all considered valid approaches to family planning. It reflects your culture's core belief. You must use every tool at your disposal, divine, magical, and practical, to navigate the treacherous waters of life. You do what you can with the knowledge you have, and for the rest, you put your faith in the gods and hope for the best. Your knowledge of the body, of conception and contraception, is rooted in the practical and the medicinal. But when you step outside your small domestic world and into the grander sphere of art and religion, these same subjects are transformed. The act of creation, the force of life, and the nature of intimacy are not just clinical facts. They are cosmic events, divine mysteries depicted with varying degrees of subtlety and, on rare occasions, with shocking frankness. On the walls of the great temples at Karnak or Medinet Habu, everything is formal, grand, and symbolic. The fertility of men is depicted with that bold, unmissable phallus, but it's a stylized, symbolic potency, not a depiction of an intimate act. The gods are shown holding hands or with an arm around each other, gestures of divine partnership. An authoritative fact of Egyptian art is its reliance on convention and symbolism. A blue lotus flower, as you know, can signify love and desire. Two people sniffing the same lotus bloom is an intensely romantic, almost erotic image. A goose, a common offering, can be a visual pun, as the word for goose, sa, is a homophone for the word for son, sa. So when you see a husband and wife being offered a goose, the art is subtly alluding to their hopes for a male heir. It's a language of symbols, a code that every one of you understands. The real messy business of physical love is cleaned up, sanctified, and turned into elegant poetry for the temple walls. But then, there are the exceptions. Whispers from the workman's village, tales of things found in tombs that don't make it to the grand public monuments. You might have heard a rumor, passed from one laughing laborer to another, of a truly remarkable piece of papyrus. Scholars centuries later will call it the Turin erotic papyrus, and it throws all the serene, formal conventions out the window. It is, to put it mildly, the raunchiest cartoon in the ancient world. This single long scroll is divided into two parts. One half shows a series of humorous vignettes of animals behaving like humans. A cat herding geese, a donkey playing a harp, a lion and a gazelle playing a board game. This is satire, a world turned upside down. The other half is a series of 12 incredibly explicit, almost acrobatic scenes of a man and a woman engaged in various acts of love. The man is balding, unshaven, and a little paunchy. The woman is youthful and beautiful, adorned with lotus flowers and elegant jewelry. The settings change, from a regular bed to a chariot to on top of a giant wine amphora. It's not romantic or sacred. It's energetic, comical, and almost overwhelmingly human. You can imagine a group of skilled draftsmen, perhaps bored of painting pristine gods for the thousandth time, letting their hair down and creating this for their own private amusement. It's a good-natured, dirty joke rendered with the highest artistic skill. This isn't just a simple doodle. An odd fact is that the quality of the drawing is so high that it must have been created by the same master craftsman who decorated the royal tombs. It's like finding a high-end comic book hidden in the Vatican. The existence of something like the Turin Papyrus creates a huge debate for historians. How widespread was this kind of explicit material? Was it a one-of-a-kind joke, or did many wealthy Egyptians own such things for private entertainment? Your world has a clear public face, pious, orderly, and serene. But it also has a private one which is clearly more ribald, humorous, and earthy. This papyrus is the ultimate proof of that. Myths, too, tell stories of divine sexuality that are far from G-rated. The central creation myth of the Heliopolitan priests tells how the first god, Atum, created the next generation of gods, Shu, air, and Tefnut, moisture, through an act of divine masturbation. This isn't seen as shameful or embarrassing. It is the ultimate act of solo creation, a god bringing forth the fundamental elements of the universe from his own body. In other stories, the gods behave with very human passions. The tale of the goddess Isis resurrecting her murdered husband Osiris is a cornerstone of your faith. But a crucial part of that story is that she magically reassembles his body and, in the form of a bird, flutters over his revived form to receive the seed from which their son, Horus, will be conceived. It's a story of love, magic, grief, and a very potent act of necrophilia that saves the divine world. It's powerful, mythological, and more than a little weird. You live in this layered world of meaning. You see the formal beauty in the temple reliefs, the symbolic language of love and family. But you also know the human reality, the jokes, the desires, the messiness. You understand that the official story is not the only story. Art and myth aren't just there to be admired. They are there to be understood on multiple levels. They contain the public ideals and the private truths of what it means to be human, to love and to create, both in this world and in the divine realm of the gods. The Turin Papyrus, you think with a chuckle, just makes it all a little more obvious. The world you inhabit is structured around a fundamental duality: man and woman, husband and wife, Osiris and Isis. This partnership is the engine of society, the core of the family, and the model for cosmic balance. Your legal contracts, your art, your religious myths, they all reinforce this heterosexual, procreative norm. It's the bedrock of everything. But human nature is rarely so simple or so uniform. What about those who didn't fit neatly into this binary? What about love or desire that fell outside the bounds of husband and wife? This is where your history becomes quiet, forcing you to read between the lines and interpret ambiguous clues. There is no word in your language for homosexual in the modern sense of a personal identity. The concept simply doesn't exist. Your society is action-based, not identity-based. The primary concern is not who you are, but what you do. Are you fulfilling your societal role? Are you managing your household, honoring your parents, and preparing for the afterlife? A man's duty is to marry a woman and father children to continue his line. A woman's duty is to manage the house and bear those children. Failure to do so would be the issue, not necessarily the private desires of your heart. An authoritative piece of evidence and a source of endless debate comes from a 5th dynasty tomb at Saqqara, belonging to two high-ranking officials named Nyankhnum and Khnumhotep. They were manicurists and hairdressers to the king, a position of great trust and intimacy. They were both married and had children, as was expected of men of their station. However, their shared tomb is decorated in a way no other tomb is. In scene after scene, they are depicted in poses usually reserved for a husband and wife. They stand nose to nose in the most intimate gesture of affection in Egyptian art. They embrace each other, holding hands. In the banquet scene, where a man would typically be entertained by his wife, Nyankhnum is entertained by Khnumhotep. His actual wife is depicted, but she's small and tucked away in a corner of the scene, almost an afterthought. Historians have been arguing about this tomb for decades. Are they brothers, perhaps twins, who were unusually close? Or are they a same-sex couple whose deep love for one another was commemorated for all eternity in this beautiful and expensive tomb, with the full knowledge and implicit acceptance of their society? The brother theory feels a bit like later attempts to explain away an uncomfortable truth. Given the iconographic conventions, their tomb presents them as a married couple. The fact they were also married to women and had children doesn't contradict this. It simply means they fulfilled their public, procreative duties, while their primary emotional and romantic bond may have been with each other. It's a compelling, if not definitive, glimpse into a different kind of love story. A funny thing to consider is that if they were just close friends, this would be the most elaborate and expensive no homo in ancient history. What about women? The evidence for same-sex relationships between women is even more scarce, almost non-existent. This is likely due to the male-centric nature of the official records. Most scribes were men, writing about the public lives and legal affairs of other men. The private lives of women, beyond their role as mistress of the house, were of little concern to the record keepers. Some scholars have tried to interpret lines in love poems or certain mythological interactions as hints of female homoeroticism, but it's highly speculative. Sappho's poetry from nearby Greece, this is not. The focus was so intensely on a woman's procreative function that any non-procreative sexuality would likely have been ignored, so long as it didn't interfere with her duties to her husband and family. Then there is the question of gender itself. Your world is one of clear roles, but there are hints of ambiguity. An odd fact that pops up in textual sources is the mention of a third gender, but its meaning is deeply obscure. Some texts mention men who take on feminine roles, or perhaps eunuchs working in high households. Priests of some goddesses were known to dress in female attire during certain rituals, blurring gender lines for a sacred purpose. Was this a recognized identity or just a temporary ritual practice? The evidence is too thin to say for sure. We know from some tales that the gods could change their form and sometimes their gender, but this was divine magic, not necessarily a reflection of human social categories. Ultimately, you live in a society that values conformity and order. Your personal life is your own business as long as it doesn't disrupt the public peace. The story of Nyankhnum and Khnumhotep suggests that as long as you did your duty, married, had kids, ran your department at the palace, your deep emotional bond with another man could be something not to hide, but to celebrate in a magnificent tomb. For everyone else, without the resources for such a grand statement, these stories are lost to time. They existed, as they have in every culture and every age, but they were lived in the quiet spaces, in the shared glance, in the private joke, beyond the reach of the scribe's pen and the historian's spade. They are the ghosts in your meticulously documented machine. While your society has clear structures for marriage, family, and even for love outside the norm, like Nyankhnum and Khnumhotep, there's another murkier side to relationships, the exchange of intimacy for goods or money. The question of prostitution in your world is a surprisingly complex one, filled with ambiguity and scholarly debate. There is no clear, unambiguous word for prostitute, as you might understand it. There's no legal category, no red light district, and no brothels that have ever been definitively identified by archaeologists. And yet, human nature being what it is, it seems almost certain that such transactions occurred. One of the challenges is interpretation. A text might mention a woman who is available or who walks the street, but this could mean many things. It could refer to a divorcee, a widow, or simply a woman of low social standing without a male protector. In a society where everyone is supposed to be part of a household unit, a woman on her own was an anomaly and often viewed with suspicion. This doesn't automatically mean she was selling her body. However, some sources do hint at a more commercialized reality. For example, some records of payment to female temple workers, particularly musicians and dancers associated with the cult of Hathor, are sometimes interpreted as evidence of sacred prostitution, the idea that sexual acts were performed as part of a religious ritual. However, this is a mildly contentious theory. Most modern Egyptologists reject it, arguing that it's a concept that Greek writers like Herodotus projected onto your culture based on their own experiences in the Near East. The female musicians and dancers were simply that, paid performers in a religious festival. It's the ancient equivalent of assuming a Las Vegas showgirl is available for private hire just because her job involves a feather costume. Where you might find clearer, if still indirect, evidence is in literature and cautionary tales. The Instructions of Ani, a piece of wisdom literature offering advice for a young man, gives a stark warning. It says, "Beware of a woman who is a stranger, one not known in her town. Do not stare at her when she passes by. Do not know her carnally." The text goes on to describe her as a deep water whose currents are unknown, and associating with her is a great unforgivable crime. This sounds very much like a warning against consorting with a prostitute. The danger described isn't just about morality, it's about social ruin. The risk of getting entangled with someone outside the clear, controllable structures of family and community. An odd fact that underscores this class-based morality is that a pharaoh could have a huge harem of secondary wives and concubines, and this was a sign of his power and virility. But for an ordinary man to seek intimacy outside of marriage was seen as reckless and foolish. Another tantalizing clue comes from that famous bad boy of the Deir el-Medina workers' village, Paneb. Remember him? The one accused of serial adultery. One of the many complaints leveled against him was that he had relations with a free woman named Tui. The fact that she is specified as a free woman might imply that she was not attached to a specific household and that the nature of the relationship was transactional. But again, it's ambiguous. She could simply have been an unmarried woman, and the scandal was the public nature of their affair. The most authoritative evidence is, as always, economic. Some tomb illustrations of banquet scenes depict serving girls attending to male guests. Their attire is often far more revealing than that of the noble women present, and their poses can be flirtatious. Is this just an artistic convention to liven up the scene, or is it a reflection of the reality that such women were available for more than just pouring wine? Furthermore, records of divorce settlements sometimes mention female servants who were owned by the husband. There's a quiet understanding that the master of a large household often had sexual access to his female slaves. This wasn't prostitution in a commercial sense, but it was a form of non-consensual, transactional sex, a grim reality of the power dynamics in your world. Historians continue to debate whether prostitution was a recognized profession or simply an informal, situational practice. The latter seems more likely. A woman who was widowed or divorced with no family to support her might find herself forced into exchanging sex for survival. This wouldn't make her part of an organized trade, but rather a desperate individual on the margins of society. The shame wasn't necessarily in the act itself, but in her status, being outside the protection and respectability of a male-headed household. So, as you walk through your village or a bustling market town, you might see a woman whose status you can't quite place. She's not wearing the garb of a mistress of the house, she has no children with her, and she meets the eyes of men a little too directly. Your culture, with its love for neat categories, doesn't quite know what to do with her. She represents a crack in the orderly facade of your world, a hint of the messy, complicated, and sometimes desperate economy of desire that churns just beneath the surface of official life. Life for you is mostly a predictable cycle of work, sleep, and family duties, all dictated by the sun and the river. But this rhythm is punctuated by moments of pure, unadulterated celebration. Festivals are the lifeblood of your community, the release valve for all the pressure of daily survival. These aren't just solemn religious observances, they are full-blown parties, sanctioned opportunities to eat, drink, dance, and be merry on a scale you never could in your day-to-day life. And in this atmosphere of joyful chaos, the strict social rules can bend a little, creating precious opportunities for romance and social mingling. One of the grandest of these is the beautiful Feast of the Valley. Once a year, the statues of the great god Amun, his wife Mut, and their son Khonsu are taken from their homes in the Grand Karnak Temple, placed on ceremonial boats and sailed across the Nile to visit the mortuary temples and necropolises on the West Bank, the land of the dead. This might sound like a somber affair, but it is anything but. The entire population of the capital city, Thebes, and the surrounding villages turns out for it. The river banks are crammed with people shouting, singing, and cheering as the divine procession passes. It's like a combination of a religious pilgrimage and the world's biggest block party. For this festival, you and your family would prepare for days. You would put on your best clothes, your finest, whitest pleated linen tunic. You would wear your most elaborate wig and your favorite faience bead jewelry. The makeup would be immaculate. An authoritative part of this celebration is the family banquet. You would pack a massive picnic and head to the tombs of your ancestors on the West Bank. The whole point is to feast with the dead, to blur the line between the living and the departed. You spread out mats before the tomb's entrance, lay out a spread of roasted goose, beef, bread, cakes, dates, and, most importantly, enormous quantities of beer and wine. You eat and drink in the presence of your beloved ancestors, reaffirming your connection to them. As the day wears on and the wine jars empty, the atmosphere grows more and more jovial. It is one of the few times when public drunkenness is not just tolerated, but encouraged as a way to achieve a state of religious ecstasy and communion. In this happy, tipsy crowd, a young man might spot a young woman across the way. He might see her laughing with her family, a lotus flower tucked into her perfumed wig. The normal social barriers are down. It might be easier to catch her eye, to share a smile. A poem describes this exact scenario. A young man at a festival, his heart drunk on the sight of his beloved, vowing to spend the whole year building a perfect little garden summer house just so he can invite her there to celebrate the holiday with him. These festivals are the great marketplace of courtship. While marriages are family arrangements, this is where the spark might be lit. A son might go home to his father after the Feast of the Valley and say, "I saw the daughter of our neighbor Nacht, and my heart is set on her." A sensible father would take note. An odd and charming fact about these banquets is the cone of perfume. In many tomb paintings of festival scenes, the guests, both male and female, are depicted with a cone-shaped object on top of their wigs. Historians have debated for years what these were. Were they purely symbolic? Or, as recent evidence suggests, were they cones of solid fat or wax infused with fragrant oils like myrrh? The idea is that as the party wore on and the wearer got warmer, the cone would slowly melt, releasing its scent and trickling down over the wig and shoulders in a fragrant, glittery sheen. It's the ancient Egyptian equivalent of Axe body spray, but far more elegant. You might joke that you knew the party was getting good when your friend's head started to melt. While grand festivals like the one for the Valley or the Opet Festival are huge public events, smaller, more local celebrations are just as important. Every town has its own patron deity, with their own saints' days, so to speak. There might be a procession for the local hippo goddess or the crocodile god, providing an excuse for a day off work, a good meal, and a chance to socialize. These gatherings break the monotony of agricultural life and weave the community closer together. They are where news is exchanged, gossip is shared, and romances blossom under the guise of religious piety. As the sun sets on the beautiful feast of the valley, the crowd slowly begins to disperse. Families packing up their baskets and heading back to their boats, their voices filled with laughter and song, their steps a little unsteady from the day's libations. You walk back with your own family, your belly full and your spirit light. The festival has done its job. It has reconnected you to your gods, your ancestors, and your community. And for the young, it has provided a rare and precious glimpse of future possibilities, of new partnerships and the promise of starting their own families, ensuring that this cycle of work, life, and celebration will continue for generations to come. The joyful noise of the festival fades behind you, replaced by the soft whisper of the cool desert air and the gentle lapping of water against the ferry as it carries you back to the East Bank, the land of the living. The torchlight on the shore glimmers and the mud brick houses of your village appear as dark, silent shapes against the starry sky. Your mind is still lingering in the west, among the tombs. The beautiful feast of the valley is a beautiful reminder that your relationship with your family, and especially with your wife, is not meant to end when your heart stops beating. In fact, all the work of your life, the plowing, the building, the raising of children, is merely a preparation for a much longer, more important existence. You aren't just building a life together, you are building an eternity together. Death, for you, is not a terrifying void. It's a transition, a dangerous journey that leads to a perfect destination. Your tomb is not a somber grave, it is your purgate, your house for eternity. And you don't intend to live there alone. Every depiction you commission for its walls, every statue you place inside it is geared towards one goal: recreating your ideal life with your wife by your side. An authoritative fact of your funerary beliefs is that these tomb paintings are not just decoration. They are a form of magical technology. By depicting a scene of you and your wife overseeing the counting of your cattle, you magically ensure you will have cattle for eternity. By painting a banquet scene with tables groaning under the weight of food and drink, you provide for your eternal sustenance. It's like creating a magical vision board for the afterlife, and you need to be very thorough. No one wants to be stuck for eternity without a good supply of beer. On the walls of your eternal house, you will be shown forever young, strong, and healthy. Your wife will be depicted as she is in your heart, beautiful, graceful, and ever-present. You will sit together on a papyrus skiff, hunting birds in the celestial marshes. You will play a game of Senet, a popular board game whose name means passing, to while away the eternal afternoons. Her arm will be around your waist, her hand on your shoulder, the same poses of affection you see in the tombs of kings and nobles. Your shared life isn't a memory you leave behind. It's the template for the life you are about to begin. Historians will forever debate how literally to understand the desire for physical pleasure in the afterlife. Some funerary texts, like the Book of the Dead, contain spells to ensure the deceased retains his sexual potency. Mummies are sometimes even provided with a funerary phallus to ensure their virility. Is this purely a symbolic desire for creative power and rebirth, echoing the myths of Osiris? Or did you genuinely expect to continue a physical, intimate relationship with your wife in the field of reeds? The truth is probably a mix of both. Your ideas about the soul are complex. The body, the spirit, the shadow, and the name are all parts of a whole person, and the goal is to reunite them. And a whole person, naturally, has desires, love, and a need for companionship. An odd and crucial ritual to make all this possible is the opening of the mouth ceremony. Once your mummified body is placed in its tomb, a high priest will perform a complex rite, using special instruments to touch the mouth, eyes, nose, and ears of your mummy and your statues. This magical act reawakens your senses, allowing you to breathe, speak, see, and, most importantly, eat and drink the offerings brought to your tomb. It's a vital procedure, like a divine switch being flipped to turn your eternal self back on. Without it, you would be blind, mute, and helpless. It's a slightly alarming thought, having a priest poke at your face with sacred tools, but it's essential for a happy afterlife. Your ultimate destination is Seket Aru, the Field of Reeds. It is a paradise that is a perfected version of the world you know. The sun is always warm but never scorching. The Nile is always at the perfect height for irrigation. The barley grows taller than a man, and the fruit on the trees is always ripe. It is, in essence, an eternal, idyllic Egypt without the back-breaking labor, the dust, the disease, or the pesky tax collectors. And the best part? You have servants for that. Small figurines called shabtis are placed in your tomb, one for every day of the year. When you are called upon to do any manual labor in the afterlife, you can just command a shabti to do it for you. It's the ultimate ancient life hack. Eternity is great, but it's even better with staff. You will live in this paradise in your house, with your fields, surrounded by your family who have passed on before you, and you will wait there for your wife to join you so you can truly begin your life together forever. That is the ultimate promise of your civilization. Love isn't just for this short, fleeting life on the dusty banks of the Nile. It is a bond strong enough to survive the darkness of the tomb, to navigate the perils of the underworld, and to blossom again forever in the golden sunlight of the Field of Reeds. And so your journey through the warm, sun-drenched land of ancient Egypt comes to a gentle close. You've walked the muddy banks of the Nile, your feet sinking into the cool, dark earth that gives life to a whole civilization. You've felt the oppressive weight of the sun and the blessed relief of the cool evening breeze. You navigated the delicate art of beauty with dark kohl lining your eyes to ward off the glare, and the ever-present threat of evil, a heavy perfumed wig sitting upon your head as both a statement of fashion and a concession to hygiene. You found your partner, your other half in the great, practical business of living. Your union sealed not by a priest but by a scribe in a carefully written contract, a document that laid out the sensible, worldly obligations that form the foundation for love. You built a home within thick, mud-brick walls, a small fortress against the chaos of the world, and you filled it with the sounds of children who are your joy, your future, and your eternal legacy. You've even peered into the more complicated corners of the human heart, glimpsing stories of love that didn't fit the perfect mold and the ever-present transactional realities of desire that hummed just beneath the surface of a society that prized order above all else. Now, as the last thoughts of this ancient world drift through your mind, let the images soften and blur. See the golden light of the eternal fields, where the harvest is always plentiful and the work is always done by others. Feel the deep, abiding peace of a love that was never meant to end. A partnership so essential that it was carefully packed and prepared for the longest journey of all. There are no more contracts to sign, no more grain to grind. There is only a quiet, peaceful continuation, a promise kept. The Nile flows on eternally, and you can let go now, drifting on its current into the quiet landscape of your own dreams. The story is over. All is well. It is over.